Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome back to your economics class again. And today, as you can see on the board, the word is written, which is definitely going to be our part of discussion, and it's going to be learned well today. So what are the things which we are going to learn today in the monopoly? We are going to find some of the characteristics and the features of the market structure which the monopoly belongs to. And secondly, we will try to find out that how it actually occurs, how the monopoly is going to occur. And the last is that how the monopolies behave in the real life, like how they actually behave. But before we go with today's topic, a quick re-look at the previous lesson. The same content was set for a similar topic, that was market structure. And the very first market structure was perfect market competition. A perfect competition market, a perfect competitive firms. So we actually learn about all of them, that how the perfect competition firms actually exist, what are the main characteristics of them, which kind of markets are there, or firms which could be considered as the perfect market. So taking a quick relook, we found out that the perfect competition, what were their characteristics? So they were like 5 points, right? We had like a large number of buyers and sellers. We had like homogeneous prices and the product. Then we got that there is a free entry and exit of the firm in the industry. And then we have the mobility of the factors of production, the customers and the producers, or the market. Everybody got the perfect knowledge about the market condition. And the last but not the least was that usually the firms in the perfect competition are price takers. They usually takes the price. They cannot influence the price. Okay, now what about the monopoly? The monopoly is the other side of the market structure. If I just say that the perfect competition is in one extreme end of the market structure, which includes large number of buyers and sellers, the monopoly is on the opposite side of the market structure, where we have large number of buyers, but we don't got large number of sellers. So how many sellers are there? The monopoly usually have one seller or maybe a few sellers. Somebody who has like 100% market share. The mono means one, and the poly or something which is related to an organization. So monopoly is actually representing anyone who is running something with his single being entity. So it shows a single. Somebody is only solely one who is actually doing something. There's a very famous Monopoly game. Some of you might have played at your home. If not, it's okay then. But today, at least, we are going to learn what's all about the monopoly. So starting with the monopoly is somebody who's one, or maybe he has 100% share, or maybe a bigger share. If we are not sure if it's 100%, then at least we can say that this type of organization have a large share of market. Now we know that what market is. The market is actually about the buyers and sellers. So it means that this is a seller which have a large share of buyers with him. Now, what are the examples which we could see immediately? What are the monopoly? Just consider in our own country, anybody who do you think is providing a loan? He's the only one who is providing that product to the whole economy. Any guesses? Okay, one example is power supplying company, or let's say electric power company, a very famous name, that is WAPDA, the Water and Power Development Authority. So this is the one, the only firm in Pakistan who is providing electricity to the whole economy, and he's the only one. So we can say that the WADA is actually a monopoly. But few might think that maybe Karachi Electric Company, KEC, is also one of, but we must know that they are actually the subsidiary of this company. So overall, we can see that they actually, if they are not 100%, but at least they have the large share of the market in Pakistan. Maybe KEC have a small that is only providing to Karachi, but this type of organization, which we are highlighting right now, is actually taking the larger share of the market. So we can say that it's a monopoly. Okay, what else? We have many other examples which we could see around us. We have like Pakistan Railways. We know there is only one organization which is eventually providing the rail services. So they are also a monopolist. Okay, we have Sri Southern Gas, and many utilities are eventually there which are carrying a greater share of the market, so they can all be known as monopoly. But what about now the private? They are all the governments. Do we have like private monopolies? Do we can say that some organization, maybe not 100%, maybe they are carrying a very large share of the market. Maybe there might be any product which eventually is covering most of the market share, maybe in the private sector. Maybe they are holding like 70% of the market, like 70% of the consumers would like to buy only their products. So that's say we can highlight that this firm, which is having a 70% of the share, can be considered as a monopoly as well. Even though they are not one, but they are at least the one who are having the larger share of the market. Okay, now who are they? Let's say if we just take an example like Microsoft. We know that this is one private firm, but they are taking a very large proportion of selling their softwares to many of us. All of us who are at back home, we are using the Microsoft product, and the company itself is actually holding a greater share. Most of the buyers are buying from the Microsoft, so they can be known as monopolists sometimes. All right, so it means that the monopoly can exist in the public sector, the governments, and in the private sector as well. So we will just find out that how do they actually occur, how they occur in the private sector or maybe in the government, how a firm can become a monopolist, and what are the benefits that it will get. That is going to be discussed under the behavior of the monopoly. So let's begin with the characteristics. What are the various characteristics of monopoly? Okay, when we talk about the characteristics, we are eventually talking about what are the features and what are the points which makes a firm a monopoly. So starting with the number 1 point, we saw previously that the perfect competition, there are large number of buyers and large number of sellers, but over here we have very few sellers but we have large number of buyers. A few sellers, can be 1, then be 2, 3, maybe 5 or 6, not more than that. So when they're going to be 2, 3, then definitely they'll be capturing the greater market share, and then they can form a monopoly. So the very first thing is that they are eventually very few. But let's consider if we are just talking about the very ideal situation, there is only one seller, just like Bopta or Media. So there is one sellers and the large number of buyers. So how it is different than the perfect competition? In the perfect competition, we have large number of firms or buyers, but over here we have one firm, and if there is only one firm, that one firm is also a one industry. So this is one difference which we can make, that the firm itself is an industry. Like we know that if there are like 4 firms in a perfect competition, but they are becoming one part of industry. So 4 different firms, let's say dealing any product, let's say they are selling vegetables, so they are firms, but they cannot be known as industry by themselves. But in monopoly, since there is only one firm, so if they are the only one existing, then they are also known as industry themselves. So monopoly can be an industry itself, it can be known as a firm together. So this is one basic difference which we can see in terms of characteristics. Okay, number 2. We had homogeneous price over there. In the perfect competition, we have homogeneous price. But over here, we have differences in prices. The prices can be different. In perfect competition, we have homogeneous price. When we visited or took an example of the vegetable market, we saw that a lot of vegetables were sold. If they were homogeneous, they were sold on same prices, homogeneous prices, alike, same. So, but over here, the prices can be differentiated. You can sell somebody with the higher prices and sell somebody with the lower prices. And this actually happens in the real life too. Let's take an example. For example, if you're just taking example of Vapda. The Vapda is a monopolist, but it has 2 ways to charge the prices. One of the prices is known as the domestic, and other is known as the commercial price. Domestic price and the commercial price of their product. If you just see in your homes, you have a special electricity meter installed outside your homes. They are installed. So they are usually known as meters, and usually there's a particular price per unit charged by the Vapda. And that unit which is charged is known as domestic units. We are just giving name as domestic price. But when we talk about a very large firm like industrial units, they are actually paying a little higher rates or price for their consumption of the product. So they are actually having a commercial electricity meter installed outside their facility, and they are charging commercial units. So domestic and commercial units. So the prices are different. Maybe it's charged as like 15 rupees per unit, but commercial might be double, maybe 30. I'm just taking example, the rates might be varying in the real life. So the rates are different. So a monopolist can charge different prices, whereas a perfect competition can't, they cannot. So the domestic prices and the commercial prices are there, and this is how the prices can be different. Now, is it only with the like the public sector, or is it somewhere like any private individual can also do that? Yes, it is very right. Like if you think that there is only one single physician in a town, a physician, a doctor who's taking care of your health. Now, if he wants to differentiate his price, since he's only one, then he can charge the different rates. A doctor can charge a higher fee from a rich person or a high income earner, but it can give a little advantage to somebody like as a low earner or a poor people charging a lower fee. So you see the prices, a monopolist can charge at different prices. So this is another characteristic which they can be making them distinguished from the perfect competition. Okay, so after the differences of prices, our very important point in the perfect competition was that there was a free entry and exit from the firm. Somebody who can enter to produce or supply or sell vegetables, he can exit and from that firm or industry, and he can sell, let's say, fruits the very next day. So there is no restriction in entering and exiting. But in this type of, we have a restriction, and we can term it as that there are barriers to enter. Like in an industry of monopoly, we usually see that we are going to impose barriers, and these barriers will not allow other firms to enter. Again, taking example of VAPTA, there we have only one single seller, and we know that it's totally illegal. It's not lawfully to produce electricity other than VAPTA in Pakistan. So there's a barrier. So when you're going to put a barrier, then definitely it will remain as monopoly. And this is one very important point. These barriers can make you a monopolist. Otherwise, if there are more entries coming inward, these entries are going to make competition. And competition is the total opposite of monopoly. This is what we discussed in the beginning. Two extreme ends. Monopoly, single seller, and the competition, more seller. So the barriers are entry. To enter the industry is actually going to be our next characteristics. All right. We knew that the perfect competition, we were usually the price takers. We were bound to take the price which is set in the market. But over here, since the monopoly he's the only one in the market, so he can influence the price, and we can give him a terminology that he is rather a price maker. He can set, or let's say, a price setter. So he can set the price of his own choice. But how he will do that? Because he's the only one in the market, then definitely he can. And how he would do that, that is our part of discussion, which is coming up right after discussing the characteristics. Okay, so having discussing with all the characteristics, now we are heading to the second content of our lesson today, and that is that how they actually occur. Occurrence of monopoly. What makes them or any firm to occur as a monopolist? How they can become a monopolist? Okay, now this is something interesting, that how there will be a monopoly occurrence, on how a monopoly will exist. For that, we need to find out one thing. If we need to see that how a firm is occurring as a monopolist, it's only because they are gaining a greater market share. They are actually controlling the greater market share. This is the basic point here, students, which makes any firm to become a monopolist. This is how the monopoly actually occurred. Now, there are various reasons which we can highlight over here, that why there would be a reason that firm could control the whole market share. Let's say there are 100 of the customers or buyers. If you're getting more and more buyers, it means that you're controlling more market share. And the market share is actually the buyers, number of buyers you're holding with you. So in the very first phase, you could say that how they could control the market share. It actually develops over the time. Over the time, you will find that firms can become monopolist. How come? Because the more you are moving onward, you are understanding the trends and taste of the people. You learn how to successfully cut down your cost. When you are able to cut down your cost, and we know that over the time, when you are producing on large scale, that means that you are eventually enjoying the economies of scale. I hope that has been learned by you. If not, then we will have this one day, but somehow economies of scales are something which enables us to reduce or cut down the cost successfully. So what happens when your average cost is falling down? You're more capable to compete with all those firms which are entering, because when the new firm is entering, they have to bear a higher cost, and a higher cost will not enable them to sell on the lower prices. So that means that over the time, the large firms enjoying the economies of scale, producing at the lower average cost, is going to enable them to charge a lower price. And your lower price is going to hit all those new firms to enter, which are having a higher cost, and they are bearing, and they have to charge a higher price. So higher price and the lower price. The lower prices will definitely is going to create a barrier for them. And once again, controlling the market share, as a monopolist, entry, the barriers to entry is definitely one of this point which we can match up, which tells us that how the cost is going to be lowered down. Okay, so it's just an end over here. Over the time, sometimes you are learning the trends and taste of the customer. You do understand that how the consumer actually behaves, and what season and time and period they demand for what type of goods and what price do they actually like it. So these observation trends and tastes, considering the taste of the customers, you're again creating somehow the brand loyalty. Yes, this is something which from where you can try to create the brand loyalty. Like if I just take example like Nike shoes, right? This is the sign. You know that most of us boys, those who like to play, those who like to train themselves physically, they like to prefer this sign. Now, this is something which shows that many of us have a little brand loyalty, and maybe any other brand. So this is one reason that over the time, if we want to control the market, we need to see what is the trend of the customer, how their taste actually change. So for that, you are creating a brand loyalty. So whenever you go and buy a pair of shoes, you prefer to buy something which your firm has been making up your mind according to your taste. So you can put any example to any other, like any beverages industries, maybe as the passage of time, how they know that how your taste actually changed. So moving from one product to another, this is how they are creating barriers for many new entrants. because they are learning your trends and taste of. Okay, so we have another way through which you can control the market is if we just form merge. I'll give you an example of two telecom recently who have merged together, the Mobilink and the Warid. Together now they are Jazz Warid or Jazz Mobilink, etc. So what happens that they both have their own customers. Since now they are joining hands together, they have been taken over, they have been merged. This is going to give them a greater market share. Hence, they are turning into a monopolist now. And this is happening, like even in the automobiles industry, even in telecoms, even in electronics. You can name any examples. Firms are joining together just because to control the market share, the monopoly is occurring in them. Okay. Then we have one very important thing to add over here, that how the monopolies will occur. It can be when the government eventually gives power to any firm to form a monopoly. Now, when it's about the government, we have already learned about it, WAPTA, Pakistan Railway, and Pakistan Steel Mills, etc. They are all examples of when the government is giving them a power to become a monopoly or to control the market share. So that exactly is another reason which we can add up in the occurrence of the monopoly. Okay. Now, there can be another reason why there would be a monopoly when there are barriers to exit. Now, this is something very interesting. Sometimes when you want to exit, being as monopolist, you can't. Why? It's just because being as a monopolist, you have to face a sunk cost. Sunk cost. Now, sunk cost is something which is not going to be recovered. You can't recover it. Why? Initially, when starting a business, you have to bear some kind of cost that which is not recoverable. Even if you want to close the business, that will remain waste. Otherwise, what happens? If you start a business, you buy some buildings and plants and machineries, and if you want to dissolve your business, you can sell them out and you can pay your all liabilities. But in a monopolist, sometimes there are some sunk costs which you are going to bear, which will not be recoverable. So for that reason, there are sometimes you're not taking exit from the industry and you remain as a monopolist and you are having all these advantages or these reasons to become a monopolist. In the sunk cost, we can add two examples over here, like an initial advertisement. Just consider that there was one popular beverage like Dew. Now, can you imagine among Pepsi and Coke, if the Dew has to enter in the market, how much initial investment they have to do on the advertisement? That is their sunk cost, because it's not going to be recovered. So they cannot cover this cost. So that is their sunk cost, and that makes them not to exit from the firm if their product is getting popular, even if they are facing now losses, and if they want to take an exit, they can't. So they remain over there and they will keep on controlling the market share, no matter how much the market share do they got. And another one is that the industry specific equipments. This is again a sunk cost for many those monopolists, which they have some equipment which they have purchased, which is an industrial specific. Consider yourself, if Pakistan Railway has invested and they have a specific equipment like railway tracks. Just imagine if they are just investing and putting cost on spreading the tracks to various regions of the country. They're spreading in somewhere where there were not tracks. And let's suppose even the people are not interested. So if they want to sell it, anybody's going to buy it? No, because it's not of any use to anyone other than the industry or the monopolist itself. So what happens that this type of specific equipment, which is only used for that purpose, is going to be a sunk cost, and it is going to create barriers for them to exit. They cannot sell and run away because it's going to give them a sunk cost, and they are not going to face that cost, and they will remain in the business just to control the market share, and hence the monopoly will be occurring over there. So now, since the time is running out, and I have one more thing to add up into it, and that was that how the monopoly can behave over there. So just summing up today's lesson, we start with influenced by the market. The monopolist is a firm by itself, so they can influence the price and the demand of the market. Once again, the behavior of the monopoly comes with when there are barriers to entry. We know that the monopolist is always earning an abnormal profit. We learned this in the perfect competition. We have three types of profits. We had abnormal profit, normal profit, and subnormal profit. In your books, it can be known as supernormal profit. So it doesn't matter there. So abnormal or supernormal, everything's okay. So supernormal or abnormal profit. So we know that when there is abnormal profit, usually the firms enter in the market. And we see in the monopoly, there are barriers. You can't enter it. So what happens is the monopolists keep on enjoying the supernormal profit. And for that, they can influence the price and it could influence the demand. But there is one problem for the monopolist. They cannot influence both at the same time. Because as the law of demand, we know that the monopolist, either he could have a higher price and lower demand of its product. And if he wants to sell more, it's going to charge a low price, let's say P1, P2 to P1, and it could increase its demand. So we can say that the monopolist have its product's demand negatively slow. So it can trade off. There is going to be a trade-off between price and quantity demand. If they are going to charge a higher price, that means that way they will have to sell a lower commodity or quantity. It will be less demanded in the market just because of the rise in the prices. And that is something which is happening in the real life. In the summertime, you can see the Vata is charging a higher rates of its electricity. And you can see why they do that, because they want their demand to be reduced. And if they want to sell more, they are going to reduce the price. Like in the winters, they are reducing the price. And that example sets for many other monopolists, and they are facing the negative demand flow curve. And this is which is known as their behavior. So once again, the behavior is through the supernormal profit. Most of the firms can't enter it. So they can influence the price and demand, but at the same time, either they are going to charge a higher price and having a low demand, or they can reduce the price and have a high demand. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope that you have all the ideas about the monopoly today. You'll be receiving a worksheet today, and I hope you'll be returning back the way it should be. So you have a nice day. I'll see you in the next lesson. Allah Hafiz.